So that journey for us today is, again, kind of looking a little bit further into this idea that we call the 5 steps of solicitation. We talked about 2 yesterday. We'll add in the next 3 this morning, and again, give you a chance to do some actual application of some of these principles around these 3 concepts as well. So let's talk about a little bit about cultivating. Cultivating and qualifying will feel a little bit the same, perhaps a little bit similar. There are some smaller or pretty distinguishing, I think, nuances that separates the 2, but they do kind of run together. So if you had to draw this in a flow chart, there's probably a dotted line between qualifying and cultivating versus a hard, bold line. So just kind of keep that in mind. So we've identified individuals, brought them into our organization, added them to the database, hopefully figured out where they are in terms of their relationship to our organization, either using AID or some other process that's already embedded into perhaps a donor relationship management software that you already have, or a spreadsheet, or whatever your ministry has been using. Cultivating is then trying to strengthen, solidify, deepen that relationship in a manner that, again, continues that relational journey. So we can get to the point where we can actually invite them to participate in some way, shape, or form into the organization. Now, it doesn't mean that's always going to happen in this complete, kind of linear way. It could happen lots of different ways. Many times people enter the stream through an event where they actually donated, right? And then we kind of find out about them, and then we have to build the relationship. So there's a lot of interaction between the 5 steps, but just know this is kind of the order that we sort of think they kind of happen in most of the time. And again, we're talking about a reciprocal, 2-way relationship between us and the person that we're having the conversation with. Donor, partner, volunteer, whoever. Lots of ways to kind of figure out what that means to cultivate an individual. Here's one example I want you to kind of think through. And again, I'm going to play off of yesterday and this AID model, this stair-step model, and look at some different ways of applying this same principle to cultivating the same way that we did to qualifying yesterday. Again, we're trying to get D's to C's, C's to B's, B's to A's as best we can, knowing that not everybody's going to become an A. We can probably find a vast majority of people in a relationship with us that we can get to be a B or a C. Sometimes the person that has just one element attached to their connection to you, their relationship with you, might be volunteering, might be a donation, might be that they attended something using the model we talked about yesterday. But it might be any one of those 3. So then we have to craft, as best we can, a strategy for a volunteer to go from C to B, or for someone who donated to go from C to B to get that second element attached to the relationship they have with us. How would you get a volunteer who only has the one item to a donation stage? How would you get someone who's attending or has attended something to become a volunteer and invest some additional time or energy or expertise in your organization? How would you get someone who's attended something to actually give a contribution? So begin to think about how would we get people to move up the staircase if we know where they start. But other ways to use this model is to think about groups of individuals. And is there a way to communicate similar information to a group of individuals to get them up from one stair step to the next? For instance, a Christian school example. My guess is many grandparents are involved in some way, shape, or form in a Christian school. I suspect that many of them may volunteer. Many of them have come to whatever sort of events they have, parents' night or open house or whatever. If you can begin to determine that, then you can use a strategy that connects an entire group of people to get them to the next level. So maybe that's a special incentive for grandparents to donate to get them from the involve step to involve and donate. So just think about ways that are groups of individuals. I call them affinity groups because they have some sort of affinity to your organization. Pastors in your area. My guess is pastors know about you and your ministry. Are they involved? Maybe to a certain extent. Do they donate? My experience is probably not. in terms of their limited discretionary income and their need to support programs in their own church. But are there other ways that you might involve them, get them to attend something? Can you do a pastor's breakfast that might bring everybody together so you can share about your organization, your ministry, bring them all together in the same room? And the take-home assignment for them would be, how can we connect better with your church? Can we come do a presentation at a Sunday school class? Can we come do a morning presentation during your missions moment at a worship service? So you can think about ways to get groups of people connected and help cultivate that relationship at the same time. So it's not always an individual. So I've tried to give you an example of maybe both that you can then kind of, again, work on. So cultivate and qualify are somewhat similar, but you're really trying to use the cultivating techniques to really drive that relationship deeper and to a more connectedness with them. Let's talk about soliciting or inviting, our fourth step of this process. And it's actually the opportunity to invite someone, to give them the invitation, to give them a call to action, if you will, to actually support your organization in some way, shape, or form. And again, we're talking about relationships. So for me, this is not a coercive, manipulative process. This is a relational, God-honoring process. Now, that process can happen through email. That process can happen through an event. That process can happen through a one-on-one conversation. Lots of ways to do that as long as we keep these relational principles in mind. And we're not trying to twist someone's arm. We're not trying to force them to make a decision on the spot or coerce them into some sort of decision. And we don't just solicit or invite for donors. Volunteers, advocates, champions, board members, members of task force. We had this task force listed yesterday on the strategic planning section. Lots of ways to fill in people who have specific expertise or experience that would be helpful in that strategic planning process. Who are those individuals and how can you invite them to become part of a short-term project or a short-term meeting that helps you get the information you need to make better decisions? So don't think about this invitation solicitation step as simply for donors. Certainly works for donors, but lots of ways to think about it. This is going to seem a little bit like, well, duh, Greg. When you invite somebody to come to something or to do something, yes is a good word. No, not such a good word. But as we invite people to join our organization or to join God in terms of what He's doing in the organization, the vast majority of the people you talk with, their first response is going to be no. It's human nature. Can you come to my party Friday night down the neighborhood? Let me see. I might be kind of busy Friday night. Oh, how about Saturday? Yeah, I might be busy Saturday too. It's just our human nature to maybe not always say yes. So we have to craft the invitation in a way that encourages people to say yes, gives them a reason to say yes, and as importantly, eliminate or prevent the opportunities for them to say no to the invitation, whether it's donation, volunteering, whatever. And for me, we go back to the linkage idea we talked about yesterday. Those people who respond, most likely to respond, are people who have close linkage to you. So the chances of me going to a D individual or a C individual and inviting them to do something significant and big and huge time commitment is probably going to get a no, depending on how I talk to them. But just know that linkage is important. We're going to introduce a different concept now we call bridging. And it really is a chance to make sure that people stay on this journey with us. Jerry, for 30 years, maybe more than 30 years, said that this concept of bridging is the single most unused strategy when it comes to inviting people or the solicitation process. I mentioned yesterday, I like to hike. I like to go out in the woods and tromp around, and sometimes I have backpacks, sometimes I don't. And sometimes on my path, I have a GPS with me. I probably have a map if I'm not familiar with the area. And sometimes I come to a stream or a river or a crossing of some kind, a ravine, and I have to cross that obstacle. So think about the relationships you have with individuals, and are there things that we do that we get them up to a point in the relationship, then we don't give them an opportunity to continue with us. We don't give them the bridge to cross whatever obstacle they sense or they perceive as someone who might be involved with us. So we simply call it bridging. And I've seen it happen many, many times where you go to a big event and people are all excited and there's some emotion in the room, and that's an important thing. And everybody's kind of whipped into a frenzy, and all of a sudden the moderator or the master of ceremony says, "Thank you for your attention, good night, God bless." And all these people are like, "Wait, I'm ready to do something, and you left me hanging." So think about the ways that we can then let people cross a bridge or build a bridge for them that allows them to continue their journey. So that's what this concept of bridging is about. Jerry tells a story. He tells it much better than I do. He was in an organization once helping as a consultant. They had a big fundraiser thing going on. They had an annual celebration, like it was maybe their 10 or 20-year anniversary. Big international organization. They had a big stadium in a Midwestern U.S. town that they had rented, had literally 10,000 people in the stadium. And they had a former U.S. president as part of the board, and they had him up on the speakers, platform speaking, and they had all these dignitaries and Christian leaders talking about the important work this group has done over the last 2 decades. And the president of the organization got up and gave his final remarks and final closing and said, "Thank you, God bless, you're dismissed." And Jerry's in the front row, and he tells the story about he almost fell out of his chair because we had 20,000 people ready to participate in something, and we didn't ask. We didn't give them a bridge. Didn't pass out a card to collect their names. Didn't give them an action point. This is way before QR codes. Didn't give them, an app they can work on. And he said, "I didn't sleep all night because we should have had something for them to participate in, and we failed." So bridging is important. We're just trying to get people to the next step in the relationship. So we talked about exposure opportunities yesterday, right? So we need to have a bridge to get them from that exposure opportunity to the next step, whatever that is that we've determined. Then the bridge is really the invitation to do something. And again, to eliminate or minimize the opportunity for them to say no, and maximize the opportunity for them to say yes, to continue that journey. Their decision to cross that bridge that you've created for them begins to create the rational relationship. They've made a decision, yes, I'm going to make that step that you've asked me to do and step across this bridge and continue the journey with you. And let me guess, if they stop at the bridge and don't continue, there's a pause in their relationship. Maybe a complete stop in the relationship, but at least a pause. So again, this bridging idea is pretty important. Here are some sample bridges. And I realize that we have several more that other network participants have crafted through their Year on Mentoring sessions. But here are some samples. Would you like to join our prayer team? Now this could be a card that they fill out at the event. This could be something on your website they complete. This could be a request for information. This could be in a personal conversation or discussion. Simple checkbox. Would you please join our prayer team? Hard to say no to that. Some people might, but then they're going to feel awkward because they didn't say they'd pray for your organization. You could go one more step and set up some expectations for them. We're looking for a handful of prayer warriors who will pray every Tuesday morning, the same time our staff meeting prays at 9 o'clock in the morning, to join us, and we'll send you a list of prayer prompts Monday evening, and you have a chance to pray for us. There's some power in prayer, number one. There's also power in knowing you're part of a group that's praying at the same time, in the same week, in the same day as the staff or as the volunteers. You could build a 30-day prayer calendar, fairly simply, and ask people, would you like a copy of our 30-day prayer calendar? And you don't have to come up with 30 different things to pray about. Every Monday, pray for the clients we work with in our ministry. Every Tuesday, pray for the staff who are going out and working on behalf of the ministry. Every Wednesday, pray for our community around this topic or this issue that we work with. You can kind of build a calendar for people that then they all get. You could actually even put it in a PDF. They print it out, put it on their refrigerator, put it next to their desk. So they have these prayer prompts to be able to work with. It's not that hard to do, and yet it goes a long way in terms of getting people engaged. It's not just, would you pray for us? Well, yeah. Would you pray for us based on this prayer calendar? Would you pray for us every Tuesday morning or whatever day that is? Grandparents. Again, Christian school example may not be appropriate for everybody in the room, but how can we get grandparents to kind of come together and rally around kids in the classroom? Could they come in and help volunteer? Got to work with the school on this, obviously. Can they help volunteer? Can they get together and help do after-school activities for young people, either in the school or in their homes? Other ways to connect grandparents to that Christian school. Coffee per week club. At least in the United States, we pay a lot of money for a coffee at a Starbucks or a Panera Bread or some other restaurant. I personally think that coffee is not very good, but what do I know? I still drink it because I'm a coffee person. But a lot of times you can say, would you be willing to consider giving up one coffee drink per week that you would go out and buy in a restaurant, let's say $4 to $5 US, and apply that to our organization? Now you may want to ask for that $20 a month instead of them giving you $5 a week, or over a quarter time or whatever, but they kind of get their arms around, oh, that's something I can do. I can give up a coffee a week at $3.50 or $4 or whatever the price is. My coffee's $1.50 because I refuse to pay the higher price. But people can get their arms around, oh, that's something tangible I can do, and you've invited me to sacrifice one coffee a week, pretty easy for me to do, in exchange for giving you a contribution of that amount. Table host for banquet, a little more time consuming. If you do some sort of banquet or gala, it's always good if they've attended the event first and then come back in and use that pool of people to recruit for table hosts. But they invite other people, they invite new people to come in, make sure the paperwork is there, make sure people feel welcome, that sort of thing. A little higher time commitment for level for people, but some people that have this gift of hospitality. Some people that are just wonderfully extroverted, unlike myself, have a great then time helping serve as a host with their spouse for a group of 2 other couples, 3 other couples, 4 other couples. Spring cleanup day. This could be for any ministry. I don't know any ministry that has some sort of facility or building that needs help, needs new fresh coat of paint on the walls, needs to pick up and spruce up the yard, do the signage out front, whatever that is, get people together. Because I'll tell you, there are some people that feel much better at volunteering in that respect than they do maybe working with clients. We've had a lot of experience with pregnancy care centers of women who want to be client counselors. And their husbands are like, I cannot do that, but I'll gladly come in and build a wall or hang a door or whatever in the actual building facility on a Saturday, because that's what I'm good at. That's my sweet spot in terms of my skills. So lots of opportunities to get people that wouldn't maybe volunteer normally in a way that volunteers them in a way that really fits their comfort level and their confidence level. You can set dollar amounts per month and give them names, give them a category. And I say 50, that may be way high in terms of US currency for what you're working with. Maybe you're looking at €5 a month. But to kind of get people to think about this regular monthly giving as opposed to one-time gift. Doesn't mean you don't also want them to maybe give a one-time gift every once in a while, but get them in the habit of actually giving on a regular basis to your ministry. Leadership Legion, that's just a term I made up, and I actually stole it from Campus Crusade for Christ, Crew as it's called now. Bill Bright, many years ago, the founder, came up with, I think he called it History's Handful. And his challenge, the vision that he cast to donors was, I want you to prayerfully consider, by faith, to giving $1 million to Crew over the course of your lifetime. And I had some friends who committed to that. And that's all going to come in equal blocks, trust me, but that's a big vision. And people get excited about that. And it is by faith, we're going to pray for God to help us generate personal income that will then be given to Crew, $1 million over the course of my lifetime. It's pretty exciting. So yours may not be that amount, yours might not even be that close, but it gives people kind of something bigger to hang on to and bigger to aspire to. Boutique brigade, I stole that from something that, again, pregnancy care centers, or if you have some sort of help resource room within your ministry, food bank, for instance, are there volunteers that come in and keep that spruced up, keep it stocked, keep it organized as people come in and draw down? The boutique in many pregnancy care centers is a place where they have diapers and kids' clothes and infant clothes and equipment and all the stuff that you know, a young mom who's never been a mom before, maybe doesn't have a lot of family support, can come and draw on some of those resources. So how can people stock that, keep it going, keep it fresh? Pray and care team. To me, this is a little bit different than the prayer team mentioned earlier, only that there might be something else that they do in terms of their work with clients. So how can they care for the ministry, people within the ministry? How can they care for clients, stakeholders, that sort of thing? And those are just samples. I would encourage you to bridge everything. Emails, newsletters, brochures, individual meetings. Don't let that individual leave that space or click off that space without having something that they might be able to do that keeps them engaged, that keeps them active. You can do this a little bit through social media, because in social media you can have the likes and the reactions, the forwards and that sort of thing. But just, I think what people do is they get locked into, oh, if I'm going to talk with a potential donor, I need to give them a bridge. And then we kind of compartmentalize that, and we don't use it in other aspects of our relationship building. So just bridge everything. Think about what your invitations are now. I suspect you have some. The response card that you hand out to people, the bottom portion of the newsletter where you ask them questions. What are those invitations now? And can the wording be changed? Can it be written in a way that makes it more likely they'll say yes, and again, in a way that is making it less likely for them to say no? So it's kind of a reflection piece for you to work on at some point in the future. Here's an important one. How will you know when someone says yes? It's one thing to say, would you please consider contributing to us? Thank you very much. We have a room full of people. How will you know they say yes? Because that's going to be an indicator of how inviting and how significant your appeal is, your bridge is. So there has to be a way for you to identify, yes, this person said yes to this, or they didn't. Then if they said yes, there needs to be a comment in the database, there needs to be a next step for them, a receipt on the contribution, if that was something that they did. So their yes ought to kick in some sort of action step for you, either electronically through the database or an appeal letter or a thank you letter or whatever that is. So when they say yes, that ought to cause you to do something. So if you're not doing something as a result of that meeting, event, conversation, then they probably said no. Let's move to this fifth step called sustaining. We talked about the 8 elements of 8 components of a good development plan. Retention was mentioned yesterday. This is kind of this retention piece in terms of donors. It's one thing to spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of people power, a lot of prayer in getting that person to give a donation. But for me, if we don't spend as much time, as much energy, as much prayer on the back end of that donation, we're probably being a bit manipulative. We're probably not honoring that donor in the best way that we could. And I've seen so many organizations do this. They spend a lot of time and energy getting people to an event, getting people to a conference, getting people to a missions trip, and then at the end, it's like you never hear from them again. And that to me is not God honoring, my opinion. And we can arm wrestle that. But just think about this idea of sustaining, and can we really build a way that we begin it's like my relationship with my wife. We had that moment where the pronouns changed and the I and the me turned to us and to we, and then we made a commitment to each other on that. And that if I just given up at that point and said, God, I got married, and hadn't continued the relationship, well, I wouldn't be looking at 40 years in September. So we need to spend as much time on the back end of that conversation, the donation, as the front end. Okay. We're going to talk about the rules of development tomorrow. It's kind of a fun, lighthearted thing that we'll talk about. I'm going to introduce one now. We have these different rules or laws that we call them. They're just kind of maxims. If you understand the Pirates of the Caribbean movie reference, they're kind of like guidelines. But a development generation is usually 5 to 7 years. In other words, you can expect some turnover in your donor base every 5 to 7 years. It's just going to be natural. People retire, they move, they go different places, they have different income situations, whatever. That's just going to happen. If it gets to be more than maybe 5% a year, I'd start to be concerned if I look at my database and see I'm having that much more connection over a year's time, for instance. It may not be a red flag, but certainly something I'm going to pay attention to. Thank you. I got to start talking faster, sorry. I have another acronym, and it's CIA, and I apologize. It's the best we could do. I'm from America. I don't know. That's how it works. But just like AID, hopefully something you can remember. And it's not the CIA that you read about in the press, but it's communication, involvement, and appreciation. So these are 3 strategies we would use to maintain or sustain the organization. Communication is pretty simple. Are we staying in touch with the people that have donated to us? Newsletters, letters, postcards, mailings, phone calls, whatever form that takes for you. And it'll be different slightly for every organization. Communicate with them on their terms. So if you have an opportunity to say, I don't need an email a week from you, but I do want your monthly newsletter. Is there a way to categorize that in your database or on your spreadsheet so we're getting the information that they want when they want it, and not too much, but also not too little. And I would focus your communication on outcomes, not activity. I read lots of organizations that send me newsletters and emails, and they're always talking about how busy they are. And they're doing this event, and they're doing this function, and they got this gathering going on, and our staff is working really hard, and we came in Saturday morning to do some other things. And that just, for me, speaks of busyness, not of God's working in that organization. So think about communicating outcomes to people, not activity, not busyness. What has God done in the last month? And make sure there's a highlighted story or article in your newsletter that goes out to people, email or print, that says, here's a way that God moved. Here's a way that God worked. Here's someone's life who has changed. That's connected to vision. That's connected to people feeling like they're part of something bigger because of their contribution, because of their volunteering. So really focus on the outcomes, not so much the activity. And they give people prayer prompts all along the way. The second one is involvement. We'd use the involvement word again. Prayer prompts, have them volunteer at an event, ways they become involved. It's one thing for them to donate. What we've learned, and I did some work in my master's class on philanthropic studies, that really said people who volunteer have a much higher likelihood of donating than people who donate have a likelihood of volunteering. You'd think it'd be the other way around, at least I did. You think people give money would certainly give their time. Not so. People who are involved and donate their time are highly more likely to give donations. We're talking about partners, not so much donors, because partners include a lot of different things, a lot of different activities, a lot of different skill sets and expertise, as opposed to simply donations. Kind of along with this, seeing just a huge amount of research coming out of the United States anyway, that when a new donor shows up, they've given you that first gift, that first check, that first contribution, a phone call or a note from a board member greatly increases the likelihood of a second gift. It doesn't have to be super personal. It could be handwritten, could be more of a form letter that's kicked out, but the person signs it. And to receive that as a new donor goes a long way in getting that second gift or third gift. Fairly simple thing to do, but it means a lot for the person that just gave you the first gift. And then appreciation. I don't think I told the story in this group yet. When Jerry was a kid, his mom would make them thank he grew up on a rural farm. So there's always this neighborly kind of help going on. So when the neighbors would bring eggs, the neighbors would help build a fence or whatever, his mom would always make his two sisters and himself thank the neighbors 3 different ways. Verbal thank you across the fence was always pretty easy. A thank you card or note was pretty easy too. And right now with systems automation, as soon as someone gets a donation in, we can hit a button and it sends a pre-scripted thank you letter. You can argue how much gratitude is involved in that, but it's pretty simple to do. But that third thank you, that third method was always the hardest. It's always the most creative, and it's usually the most meaningful.
Which one?
The third one. So the written and spoken is pretty simple. So what is that third thing that's meaningful to that relationship? It might be, frankly, it could be a combination of a note from the board member. It could be that I come across something that happened with one of their grandkids in the newspaper that graduated from secondary school, and I pick up the phone and said, hey, I just left a voicemail. Hey, just want to know, I saw that your grandson graduated with honors. That's so exciting. You must be really proud of him or her. That takes some time, but I can assure you that is an incredible gift to the donor, gift to the partner in terms of you recognizing. They can't do that for every single person every single time. You'll have to kind of sort out how that happens. I have one client who the wife, it's a husband and wife who runs the team, the wife makes sure that every donor on the database gets one handwritten card from them every year. She just sits down and does a handful every week until she has all of them taken care of. And that's in addition to the regular newsletter, the regular mailings, the regular updates on email. That will take some time to build into your system. And you'll try to figure out, you need to know something about the donor to be able to do that. But again, that third way of thanking them takes some more time, takes some more creativity, but it's also the biggest way to get there. Let me give an example. This was something that just happened to me. One of the members of the YRM group last year was not able to come to ELF because of some other personal issues, but he already paid his money. And he wrote ELF and said, would you please make sure that my registration money gets transferred to Greg, because what he's done with me over the last year has been so important to me. Now, my heart melted. It was also a huge blessing, frankly. But it's that kind of thing. It may not be monetary, but that kind of connects the relationship that I had with him and continue to have with him. So I thanked him lots of different ways because of that.